Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're breaking down one of the most important concepts in all of economics, gross domestic product, or GDP. We're going to look at how economists measure it by answering a pretty simple question. Where does all the money go? We'll do this by adding up all the different kinds of spending in an economy. Just so you know, all the information we're using today comes from the fantastic Core Economics Open Access textbook. It's a great resource if you want to dig deeper into any of these ideas. So think about it. How do you possibly take the trillions of individual transactions that happen every single day in a country and boil all of that down to just one number? Well, the answer lies in a really powerful formula that neatly sorts all that spending into just a few key categories. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the big picture idea of measuring spending, then we'll introduce the core formula itself. After that, we'll break down each piece one by one, and finally, we'll see how it all fits together by comparing a few different countries. First up, what are we actually measuring? Well, you can think of gross domestic product, or GDP, as the grand total of all spending on final goods and services that are produced inside a country during a certain period of time. It's basically a snapshot of the economy's output, but from the perspective of who's doing all the buying. So how do we calculate it? It all comes down to one central equation. And this isn't just any formula. It's one of the most fundamental identities in all of macroeconomics. And here it is. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus the quantity X minus M. Now, economists call this an identity, which is really just a way of saying that it's true by definition. Think about it. For every single thing that's made and sold, someone, somewhere, had to spend money to buy it. So total spending simply has to equal total output. Each letter here represents a different group of spenders in the economy. C is for consumption by households, I is for investment by firms, G is for government spending, and that last part, X minus M, captures how the country interacts with the rest of the world. So let's break each one of these down. All right, let's tackle the first and, in most developed economies, the biggest piece of the puzzle, consumption. Consumption, or C, is pretty straightforward. It's just all the spending that households do on the goods and services they buy. This covers almost everything an individual or a family purchases to meet their daily wants and needs. We can even break these purchases down a bit. You have durable goods, things that last a while, like cars or washing machines. Then there are non-durable goods, which get used up faster, like food and clothes. And of course, there are services, which are intangible things like getting a haircut, paying rent, or your gym membership. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at how much the role of consumption can vary. In the US, spending by households drives almost 70% of the entire economy. But then you look at China, where consumption is a much smaller slice of the pie, just 37%. This tells you right away that these countries have fundamentally different economic models. Okay, moving on from households, let's look at two other huge players in domestic spending: investment, which is our I, and government spending, our G. When economists talk about investment, it's really important to know they mean something very specific. This isn't about you or me buying stocks and bonds. In GDP terms, investment is spending on new capital goods, things that will be used to produce other things in the future, as well as spending on new housing. So, to put that into practice, when a factory buys new machinery, or a company builds a new office building, or even when a family buys a newly built house, all of that is counted as investment. It's all about spending that builds the capacity for the future. And that brings us to G in our formula, which stands for government spending. This is basically the government acting as a customer, buying goods and services for the public. This covers everything from the military to local schools. Now, here's a really crucial point about what gets included in G. It includes government spending on goods and services, like paying the salaries of public employees or building a new highway. What it does not include, however, are government transfers, like pension payments or unemployment benefits. That money only gets counted in GDP later when the people who receive it actually spend it. And when they do, it gets recorded under C for consumption. Okay, so far we've only talked about spending inside a country. But of course, that's not the whole story. Modern economies are totally interconnected, and our formula needs a way to account for that. And that's where net exports comes in. This part of the equation adjusts our total to make sure we're only measuring what was produced domestically. We calculate it by taking the value of everything a country sells to the rest of the world, its exports, and then we subtract the value of everything it buys from the rest of the world, its imports. This is also known as the trade balance. Think of it this way. Exports, our X, represent spending from other countries on our stuff, so we definitely want to add that to our GDP. But imports, our M, represent our spending on things made in other countries, so we have to subtract that amount because that spending didn't contribute to production here at home. So what does that mean in practice? Well, if a country sells more to the world than it buys, its net exports are positive, and we say it has a trade surplus. But if it buys more than it sells, net exports are negative, and it has a trade deficit. All right, let's put all these pieces together and see what they tell us. By looking at the share of each component, we can get a really clear snapshot of what makes different economies tick. This table really highlights how different the economic structures are around the world. You can see the US economy is overwhelmingly driven by consumer spending at nearly 68%. Now contrast that with China, where investment makes up a massive 43% of their GDP. And then you have Germany, which really stands out with a big trade surplus, meaning net exports actually add to its GDP. So ultimately, as core economics puts it, this formula is an incredibly powerful framework. It's not just a math problem. It's a way to systematically see who is driving the economic activity in a country. Is it the households, the businesses, the government, or the rest of the world? And this really leaves us with a big, important question to think about. Understanding this breakdown isn't just an academic exercise. It's a tool that helps us ask much deeper questions about how economies work and what might happen next. Thinking about that balance between consumption, investment, and trade, well, that gives us real insight into a country's entire economic journey.